Hi everybody and welcome to the Money Man show, and I've got Papa Smurf, Mark Keohane.
That's right.
Nice new look.
Thank you. Who's that?
And I got James Dalton. Welcome, guys.
Thank you, Kevin.
Interesting week. We've seen each team now play. I mean, let's chat about the South Africa All Blacks game, because I mean that was the game of for every South African, obviously, and there was quite a sense of euphoria that South Africa were going to do well in that game. I believe that it was a meaningless game because we'd get Ireland in the quarters, and we'll beat Ireland. I know, James, you think it's going to be a tough game, and it will be a tough game. But Ireland doesn't hold any worries for me.
I suppose it's a matter of opinion, but if you look at Ireland, they've been consistently good. You know, we've been inconsistently average. You know, we blow hot and cold. And as I said, I think cohesively, collectively, I don't think our forwards and our backs complement each other at the moment. I don't think our backs are on par with our forwards, if you want to draw a parallel to that. Similarly, if you look at an Ireland and in England and the All Blacks, their forwards and backs complement each other. They're equally good. Yeah. So I think that's in saying that, you know, if we're not on our A game, I think we could come unstuck against the Irish in the quarters.
Yeah, I think what's interesting, Kevin, the next 3 weeks is we got Namibia, we got Italy, we got Canada. And the focus has gone straight from New Zealand to Ireland. It has to be within that squad, but they've got to get through 3 games. They've got to kind of talk themselves up. It's like you've got 4 or 5 players in Namibia playing for game time. A Frans Steyn, a Lut, De Jager, they haven't played much. And whether they win by 60 or 105, it's going to be rather irrelevant. It's
not for betting.
Not for betting. No, I'm saying, but not for betting, but within that context of that team. So you also don't know what you're going to get when they're out there. They've got to get through these 3 weeks, and it's the one thing about this World Cup is great opening weekend, and then great last 3 weekends. But in between that, it's more a bore than anything else, because you know the results. It's a matter of, is it going to be by X or Y? Everything that we feared in the World Cup, the Pacific Island has been underdone, underprepared, has been borne out.
Let's keep looking at that. You've got Tonga, who are bankrupt. Samoa, basically the same. Fiji, and even Russia, where they've sent over, they're sending over these emergency coaches and trying to put some structures in place to make but it's an embarrassment. I mean, we're watching England now. It's 45-0 for England against the USA. And to me, the USA and the Islanders, the Pacific Islanders, and other teams have gone backwards. You know, the IRB is letting itself down by not really promoting the game the way that they should be.
But I mean, you talk about teams going backwards, and you go back to early World Cups. You think specifically 1991. Just how strong Canada was.
Yeah,
and when
Canada played with all those guys.
When Canada played the All Blacks, and it was 29-15, and it was a fight for 65, 70 minutes.
Yeah.
And you're getting Italy swatting aside Canada 42-9, 43-9 earlier today. And I mean, you will know more than most, 95, when you played for 70 minutes against them.
Am I ever going to forget that?
But I mean, they were a side that
real mongrel, eh?
But you knew you were going to be in a contest.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, you know, when you make these types of comments and you look at the performances of the Pacific Islanders countries, is it really a World Cup then? You know, is the game being done justice in terms of developing well enough? And it certainly doesn't look like that.
No.
But I think it's like, if you look at the 7 circuit, that people want contests, and so they want strength against strength. And it was mooted a few years ago that why isn't there a and a B Division World Cup that happens simultaneously, and then in a different format, and could be your top 6 teams play each other, and each one plays the other one, and then X goes through into a semi-final, or the top 2 go through into a final, and then your next 6 play each other, because you've got such one-sided results now. Now we know Namibia, who took 100 points in the Supersport Challenge. Now they've been talked up against the Springboks, and the Springboks are saying it's our African neighbours, that's going to be a big game for them. New Zealand's going to send out whatever team there, and they'll do it as a practice run and put 50 or 60 and potentially stop there. England played for 30 minutes against Tonga, and that was enough. you know, the first 20 minutes today, you knew this game was going to be big as well. And so we get excited about Russia being brave because they were 7-6 up against the Samoan side.
I'm sick of those adjectives. Brave. And
Yeah, Samoan.
courageous.
They won respect.
Passion.
You know, they were 7-6 up against a side that was reduced to 13 and should have had 13 on the field for the rest of the game.
Yeah.
And I just feel the format is one wrong, but also World Rugby's deluded to keep on saying we're a global game that is so big. It's not. There's 6 teams who could win this World Cup, and there are only 6 teams in World Rugby currently. And that, from a spectacle, is a problem. I mean, last year at the end of the year, November series, you and I chatted on the Money Man, and it was like, this is how the World Cup should be. There were great matchups every weekend. It's like Australia was playing Wales, New Zealand was playing against England, Ireland was playing Australia on the same Saturday. And you thought, wow, what a feast of quality rugby. You don't get that now.
In the same breath, World Rugby has changed. You know, I mean, not to say my day,
For
but
the better or the worse, James?
I think for the worse, and maybe even for the better. I mean, if you look at
So which one is it?
no. But if you look at your tier two nations,
I would say that was a silly comment,
pathetic.
but I don't want to say that.
But they're
It's so big.
apathetically poor. But in my generation, when we played the Northern Hemisphere sides, it wasn't whether we were going to win or lose. It was by how many points we were going to beat them by. Now, we're actually considering an Ireland and a Wales and an England to be winners of the World Cup.
But isn't that the problem, though, that the IRB is centralized into making its power base currently stronger and not really focused on the States? Because if they were serious about the world expanding the game, they would have had a World Cup in the States. They would have had one in Canada. They would have had one in other countries, other than just looking at countries like Japan.
But if they were really serious, they would have had, and you've got 4 years, or you've got 8 years, or 12 years, to close the gap between teams 7 to 16 on 1 to 6.
Yeah.
All it's done is stretched. And if you look at an Argentina and a France who traditionally were competitive in that top 6, they're not anymore at the moment. And everyone keeps on saying France. France hasn't been anywhere for the last 6-7 years when it comes to consistent performances. In Argentina, I think, what was the stat you said, Kev? 3 out of their last 26 games, I think they've won.
Less now. It's now 3 out of 32.
3 out of 32, and everyone keeps on talking about their 2015 World Cup. Since then, they've hardly won a game.
Well, I mean, look at Argentina. They've
I
lost.
think they've won 3.
I mean, Argentina have lost what 8 or 9 Test matches in a row. You know, and everybody's talking them up as like an X factor in the World Cup. So, you know, obviously there's a lopsided conversation to be had here.
But how does, Kev, how does that translate to the punters game now?
Look,
Where do you make your money, say, on these, what we say would be meaningless matches in terms of from a rugby perspective, but from a sports betting perspective, how do you make money on a Namibia, South Africa, or on a Canada All Blacks game?
Well, you know, it's difficult because to get I start with looking at form guides and seeing, okay, who have they played for comparative scores? And that's the first bit, but they don't play the same teams. So it's very difficult. So then you have to go even deeper and see that who they played, that team may have played the team that they're playing. You know, and that form is a bit patchy. So, you know, I look at the referees, who's refereeing the game. I look at the weather conditions. I mean, it's humid. It's in the America game, the point total was 58 and a half. It's 45. I mean, it was. They've been lower scoring games than what they would in other conditions because of the humidity. So it's hard, Mark. It really is. It's hard for the bookies and the punter to try and make sense of that. That's why when you get games like Wales, Australia this weekend, you at least you got a lot of form guide to pick and see. Okay, well, who's played who and they play, and we can get a sense. I mean, in fact, they played each other last year. Wales beat them. So they played similar teams.
So what are the odds on that game?
Wales are favoured by -1.5 points against Australia.
And where's your money? Show them the dragon.
It's called Puff.
Does that dragon come alive at night?
Sorry, ladies, if anybody was eating out there, it looked a lot better 20 years ago.
So your heart,
A dragon's looking like
Look,
a
you know-
Loch Ness monster.
Yeah, looks like an eel.
so your heart has to say Wales, but your head.
Look, we've always struggled against Australia. Look, I'm not going to bet on that game, Mark, for God's sakes. I mean, it's Wales. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to bet 2,000 Rand on Australia to beat Wales. It pays back 4,400 Rand. And I just think that Australia will have our number again. I'll be cheering for Wales. I'll be cheering for the funds to lose the bet.
Do you think that is when Wales play against New Zealand, and even though they haven't beaten them for 50 odd years, it's always a competitive, tight game. When they play South Africa and they've beaten South Africa quite comfortably in the last 3 games, it's because they embrace that physical contest. But Australia stays away from their physical contest. It becomes a very tactical, technical, kind of like game of chess. And that Wales need to be playing a team that physically is taking them on to kind of find that extra gear. And I always sense a lot of frustration in the Welsh players when they're playing against Australia. It's like they can't get into the game.
Yeah, there's a lot of spoiling and stuff like that, stop starting. Yeah, look, you know what, I can take that bet. Let me take it back. I'm not going to bet for Australia. That would be sacrilege. That's almost like betting for England.
But would you advise your followers out there to put a tiggle on Australia because Wales have traditionally struggled against them?
I'm going to tell my two followers, Mum and Dad, to stay away. You know? And my dad's Irish, my mum's Welsh. So so I've got a bit of heritage there in cheering for Ireland as well. So
where do you make your money this weekend at the World Cup?
I don't know if you do. I mean, you know, the point is that I don't bet on every single game. If I had to pick every game and place a bet on it, I wouldn't be that profitable. So I look for mistakes or where the bookies get it wrong. Now, I did bet on Uruguay yesterday, but I didn't think Uruguay were going to win. I just thought that the odds were wrong, and they offered a great value for an upset, especially with all the changes.
What were the odds on that game?
22-1.
And you put down?
Just 250 Rand. Paid back 6,000. But it wasn't, you know, it was. I expected to lose, but the bookies were offering what I considered to be 200% more value for that bet, whereas I pegged Uruguay to have an 11% chance to win. The bookies were saying they have a 4% chance to win. So there was great odds for an upset. There were even greater odds for an upset, and that's where I put some money, and thank God it paid off. There's always opportunities to make money, but a lot of it is in running. It's especially with games like if I had bet on I didn't bet on the USA England game, but I would have, if I had time and I wasn't doing these shows, I would have watched the first 10 minutes, 15 minutes of the game, get a feel for it, see how it's going. And if you played rugby and you know a lot about rugby and watched a lot of rugby, you can get the nuance of a game and the way it's going to go, and then make a decision. So I almost feel like you have to put a punt on the game before it goes. Online betting is becoming quite prevalent and big in this country. So that's where I look to make my money. I do think that the Boks offer great value at minus 58.5. I think that they're just going to run ragged over Namibia, and you could see an 80 point difference. It should be just one-way traffic. A lot of guys playing for their places. A lot of guys getting a run out. Namibia's already played a pretty tough game against Italy, was it? So I just think it'll be absolute one-way traffic in the Bok game. I take my bet off Australia. I'm putting 5,000 Rand on the Springboks to win by 59 or more points.
So what will you get back?
I'll get back 9,500.
James?
Yes, Mark, what would you like to know?
What are you going to do with that 9,000?
Buy myself a suit.
Yeah,
So what, Mark, I mean, let's go back to the Australia-Wales game. Who would you punt?
I hear what Kev's saying, and we had this discussion last year when I bought into that thing. They just struggle against this team, but at the time you felt the form was with Wales and they would break that cycle. It was one of those 9-6 games. I think there was no try scored.
It was a turgid game.
Terrible game, but they psychologically broke through, and I just think Wales have improved.
Yeah, Australia, no doubt, Mark, are not a good team.
Yeah.
Look at how they struggled against Fiji.
So
You look at they've had now Hodges is not available for those games. Wales should. They're the better team, but they just.
I think if Wales want to put down a marker for this World Cup, they have to beat Australia.
Absolutely.
Because it's a side that South Africa beats regularly and New Zealand beats regularly. And England beats regularly. So if you can't beat Australia, the question is, can you beat those other teams at a World Cup in a playoff match?
I think you'd hope based on form. If you look at consistency over the last couple of years, I mean, Wales have beaten South Africa 3 years in a row. I don't think the Welsh side travel well. That's the first thing. But also you look at Australia, they've also been very poor over the last couple of years. I think they've got a 28 or 30% win average at the moment. So I think it should be a good matchup. I'm going to go with Wales to beat Australia.
Yeah, and where I come from, you go for whoever is playing Australia in any sporting code. That's where you put your money, that's where you put your head and you put your heart. So I'm going with Wales, and I think they'll win by between 7 and 10.
I used to play, I'd rather lose to Australia than lose to England.
Nobody I know.
The inventors of the game.
So what are the Boks? What's the margin of victory for the Boks?
I'd be very surprised if the Boks don't at least put, as you said, 60 points on Namibia. I'd be quite concerned if we don't beat them by more than 60.
Alton Yankees said, I thought, you get all these inane quotes that come out of all these sanitized press conferences. But he was asked, where's the relevance in this game? And he said, we need to put in an 8 or 9 out of 10 performance, not a 6 out of 10 performance, which we tend to do against these teams. And then we say it's one of those messy games, like the Argentinian game at Loftus. They brought us down to the level. He says, if we really want to be a factor at this World Cup and those fringe players want to push for places, you've got to go in and smash that team. And I would say on a scoreboard, 80 points plus has to be a measurement, but convincingly that, as England making 10 changes, that first 10 minutes today, I was fortunate to see it. You just knew this was going to get messy. They played with power, intensity, and those are guys pushing to be in that top team. And none more so than a George Ford, who he wants to play. We had a 12 or 10 because of the Tuilagi and the Owen Farrell combination. But I was impressed with their intensity. And I think if I want to see one thing from South Africa on Saturday, regardless of the opposition, it's show me the mongrel, you show me if you played the All Blacks, the intensity, and don't kind of let up and smash these guys. They shouldn't be at the World Cup.
Yeah, Mark, Kevin, I also agree with Mark there. I think in terms of performances, you've got to, when you're playing like a Namibia and a Canada and a Italy, you've got to go out there and smash them. You've got to absolutely break them. And if you're not going to be able to do that, you're not going to land up in number 1 or number 2 in the world. If you can't consistently perform at the same level all the time, regardless of who you're playing. You can't only perform against New Zealand and then put in apathetic and average performances against the tier 2 nations. So if we want to be contenders, we have to go out there and give these guys a proper caning.
Well, we're not allowed to hit children anymore, so that's what
Okay.
Not in South Africa, but in Japan you can. So caning it will be.
Yeah,
proper disciplining.
Yeah, there's not much to talk about in this game, is there? I mean, like you say, Namibia shouldn't be at the World Cup. It looks at Canada, they shouldn't be at the World Cup. Canada's performance this morning was just used to be so aggressive in the tackle. All those guys could tackle, as James would probably attest to. In the '91 World Cup, I was there watching that game. I remember the game where we played against, I think a friend of mine, Al Chiron, scored against Canada, against New Zealand. And it was a competitive game. You're right, it was 65 minutes in, and now you look at Canada, they're embarrassment to rugby.
Yeah. Just to go back to that Bok game, I just think it's important. Franz Steyn gets 80 minutes, okay? He wasn't even brought on against the All Blacks, which surprised me. He's to me a very important player when it comes to playoff times. Our locks take so much strain. That's why I said Luert he needs a good run out, a good hit out, and just a little bit of confidence from the back three to put a bit of pressure on the incumbents, because I wasn't overly impressed with Willie. I thought Mpimpi was poor defensively.
Willy's been poor the entire year. It's not only now in the World Cup, in his first appearance. He's been bad in the Tri-Nations. I think he's maybe in all probability a season overdone. You know, he's not confident. He doesn't have confidence, and he's showing signs of a bit of fear and easily intimidated. You know, in the context situation, the high ball.
And I think also, sorry James, that if you look at the team combination, if you look at a Kwagga Smith, it could be an important game for him to challenge the ingrained mindset of Rassie, that it's Dwayne, Pieter-Steph and Sia, and maybe tinker with a Pieter-Steph can go to the lock for Franco Mostert and the Kwagga can come in, because we do lack that explosiveness. And I thought at the breakdown we lacked that against New Zealand. We employed Sam Cane and Severe. Cane only lasted 40 because of the concussion, but they were mastering us in many aspects of kind of the breakdown and winning very crucial turnovers. But when we needed that explosiveness to take the game up another level, they managed to do that for the 3 or 4 minutes.
Yeah.
We were at the same intensity, a great intensity, but there wasn't that from 10 to 20 like that. It was from 10 to 12 to 13. So I like some of those combinations. It's how they can actually challenge what Rassie may have as a preconceived idea. That's my best 15, that's my best 23, and we're going to do it this way. Because the one thing that Boks team did lack against New Zealand, outside of Cheslin Colby, was an X-factor player.
And the X-factor player is Herschel Yankees.
Yeah.
To me, I've said this since seeing after his second game. You know, the first game could be a bit of a fluke and what, but that kid has something special. And that's the sort of thing that you need, not the predictable. The ponderous delivery of slow service from Faf was embarrassing. His kicking was atrocious. I mean, he kicked how many balls? And did we?
I think he kicked 17, balls, and we only recovered 2 of the 17.
Yeah, I mean that's just not good enough at any level.
But you know, as I said to you guys before we started this chat, is Rassie actually telling Faf to play that type of game plan,
I would imagine,
or is Faf just doing it on his own?
Well, Rassie's a control freak,
but I mean, it's concerning that a player plays that style of play that is not conducive to a winning formula, kicking the ball away to a team that is known that once they get possession, you're not going to get it back after at least 20 phases, and a team that can turn a game on its head by fortuitous opportunities. I mean, you give them 2 chances and they score 2 tries.
So let me ask you this question then, guys. If we were to get to the quarters, if the quarterfinals were today and we had to play Ireland next week, all things being equal, do you think that Faf would start or would Herschel start?
I think Rassie will start with Faf, because the conservative nature of Rassie is there's also this, and I felt there was a moment on Saturday where it needed Herschel to come into the game earlier.
Yeah.
Just as we were coming back into that game, you start that.
I'd say in the 30-minute mark.
No, you could just see New Zealand start again thinking, because it's a bloody good Springbok pack and it's a good heavy side, but they seem to know that there wasn't anyone who could do the unexpected outside of Cheslin Colby. They've seen that now every time he's played against them. It's like a young Christian Cullen. He can just create something out of nothing. You know, and Herschel Yankees does that. Faf only does that if his pack's on the front foot and he's sticking it in the corners and he's in a robust game. But Faf doesn't produce those moments of magic that change a game. A Ricky January, go past Mialamu, chip it, catch it and score. And I think if we are going to be true to all the pre-tournament predictions of winning this thing, it's going to require that moment where Rassie potentially acts out of character and is a lot bolder than he may even believe to get a player on who changes the game.
What I would like to propose.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point, Mark. And sorry, James. So message to Rassie: please start Herschel in the big game.
Get him on after 10.
At least after. What I'd like to pose a question is the team that played the All Blacks, is that our 15 best that we can select? Or, I mean, talking about the X factors. Who else?
Well, Rassie would have to be an idiot to put out the same team against the All Blacks after witnessing what we witnessed. You know, for me, the two. Pollard had an off game. You should have made that kick. Those kicks for 3 points in a game between the All Blacks and the Springboks is so crucial.
Do you know what I find very interesting about Steve Hansen's approach to a lot of the others is Rico Ione scored 22 tries in 26 tests. Breakthrough player of the year 2 years ago, greatest winner, better than Lamu, some said. He's 22 years old. He picked George Bridge, and he said he's better at the moment. He's been the form winner for the Crusaders. His work rate's better. He makes our nines kicks better. And he says, Rico's hit a wall. He's got to you'll get an opportunity, and then he's got to show me. We don't do that. We say, but Billy's been brilliant for 3 years.
Yes.
We don't pick the red hot player when he's red hot. And
Well, I would never say Billy's been brilliant for 3 years. He's in patches of form.
But it's like you know, in that sporting parlance, they say when someone's, in cricket especially, when they're scoring runs, pick them. Don't keep on persisting with it.
But I mean, surely, I mean, if you're playing for the Springboks, for South Africa, you've got to be the best in the country at any given point.
Unfortunately, it's a subjective thing.
Yeah, but I'm finding difficulty with all of that. You know, we say Herschel Jantjies, and everybody says, no, but he's too young. He needs to grow into his position and mature a little bit more. Nonsense. If you're good, you're good, regardless of your age.
Yes, of course.
And that's a problem I have. You know, are we choosing, like Mark says, are we choosing the red hot on fire players with form? Or what are we trying to select here? At the end of the day, rugby is about the results. It's about winning. You know, everything else is immaterial. You go through a year, you play 10 test matches. How many do you win? How many do you lose? And you know, if we're not getting that methodology correct, then we're doing something wrong.
Look, I'm making the assumption that Wales will beat Australia and get through to the semi-final. And why I'm confident about an Ireland game is because Rassie coached Munster. He coached 10 of those players.
Yeah.
He knows their culture. He said to me once, we should never lose to Ireland. I've coached these guys. I've seen how they can fall away in games. But there's always been a healthy regard for the Welsh. Then you take Rassie's informed Munster side, got blown away by the Scarlets in a final that everyone thought they would win in Dublin. And they were 33 down after 20 minutes. And the Irish players couldn't come back from that. So I think psychologically he will feel that he's got an edge in that game. But it's, you know, we talk the All Blacks because traditionally we get up for it, but the team that has got our number at the moment is Wales. And he's going to have to look at his 15 and say, I need to do something slightly different to actually win this thing. Because I looked on social media again, and yes, the referee was atrocious, but that wasn't the reason we lost the game. And if we keep on believing that, we're not going to get beyond those deficiencies that are there. And full of confidence that they still can go all the way, but they need to, within this tournament, change their thinking slightly and become a bit bolder.
Okay. Well, what changes would you? We'll wrap the show up now. What changes would you make if we were playing Ireland tomorrow? What team would you put out there?
I would in the pack. I would start with Bongi. I think it's a big blow that we've lost Trevor, and start with Bongi because Malcolm Marx just isn't quite where he was a year ago. But to have him and I'd start with Beast because I think Marx and Kitsov coming off the bench are very dynamic. I would move Peter Steff into lock, have Franco Mostert then on the bench or alert, and I would bring in a Quagga to give us something to combat that Irish back row. I would start with Herschel. I would start with Frans Steyn, and I would probably still keep Willie because of that experience, but I would bring Nkosi in on the one win with Cheslin. Alternatively, Cheslin to fullback, and then the two winners. And
I'd move Cheslin to fullback.
You know, and then all of a sudden you've just got this different dynamic. But I think there are changes that could be made to the side, and it's the manner of our defeat and what they did. New Zealand showed that X factor moment. The chip kick, Sevu Reece just beating Mpimpi, and then what the skill level of that try. And there's a cannon reverse angle when you see what the Bok players saw as that try was coming. That potentially, when they look back on their campaign, and should they go on to win, it could say, that moment we felt we could play rugby again. And we haven't shown that kind of moment yet.
Yeah.
You know what was quite interesting for me that stood out in the South Africa All Black game was that everybody, you know, we all talk about this, the open side flank and creating the turnovers at breakdown. They weren't interested in that. They didn't care about creating the turnover ball at the breakdown. They totally removed themselves from that, thereby protecting themselves and hence giving away less penalties. And it was very, very interesting. You know, we almost become fixated with certain trends in our game.
Yeah.
Like at the moment now, we're all talking about this amazing rush defense. Rush defense has been around for 20 years, 30 years. You know, it's about carrying the ball, keeping the ball, and scoring tries. It's not about defending. You shouldn't be defending if you've got the ball. So, you know, we tend to become obsessive compulsive in certain aspects of our game, where we then tend to neglect other parts of rugby. And then the point is, rugby is about scoring tries and keeping possession and giving away less penalties than your opposition. That is the nuts and bolts of it.
Thanks, James, for that. Mark, thanks very much.
Pleasure.
So just before we sign off, you're both saying the Boks by 60 plus,
Definitely.
and you Wales. I don't know yet. Yeah.
I have Wales 7 to 10.
Yeah. I'm still agonized.
And they'll be going off in Mary Street.
Should be a good game. Anyway, thanks guys for coming in, and look forward to doing another show next week.
Pleasure. Thanks, Dave.
Cheers.